When it comes to product photography or still life, things like that, there's only so many ways that you can place an object in the frame of your image. You can move the camera in relation to the subject, you can move the subject around, but really it's just an object sitting there. Not very exciting, not very engaging. However, if you change the subject in relation to its environment, things start getting a lot more exciting, and that's where suspension comes in. Now, there are a ton of tutorials and reviews and videos out there of different ways that you could do this. A lot of them will suggest wire or fishing line, and it's something I've played with a lot. Can I tell you that both of those are not a lot of fun? Fishing line, unless you really are good at fishing knots, tends to come undone all the time, and your subject will just fall. To position things so they hang properly can be one or two different leads putting in position. The slightest breeze will cause things to move. Just walking across the room to hit the shutter button can do that as well. It vibrates things. Yeah, they're not always the best solution, although in some cases they may be the only solution, especially for complex things. But for what I'm going to show you today, it's a much simpler and easier solution. Instead of hanging it, we're going to suspend it on top of a pole, and that's going to allow us to position it boom pole style exactly in the angle and position that we want and get our image exactly where we want it to be. For this method, for this manner, you don't need a lot of things, and they're fairly inexpensive and easy to get a hold of. First of all, you're going to need a glue gun. This is a cheap piece of garbage, $5 glue gun. It's a hard word. Glue gun from the craft shop. You can pick these up quite easily. Now, I did order a fancier one in. I ordered it in from Amazon a couple weeks ago, specifically so I could do this video. I wanted to show using a wireless glue gun because I think that in a lot of cases, not being tethered to the wall would get you right onto the set where you want to be a lot easier. However, the one that I got refuses to charge, so it's getting sent back tomorrow, and I'll get a replacement for that. But yeah, point being that you can use any glue gun you want. You're going to need some sort of suspension rod, something to use. Now, I've got a whole pack of bamboo skewers here, and I've used these a ton of times in the past. They do have a huge benefit in that because they're wood, they're a little bit flexible, but you can cut them down to any size that you want. So if you need your subject right down to the ground and you want it to be on that angle, you could just cut it there, or you could have it there or there, wherever you want. However, the downside to these is that, yes, they are solid, and depending on your lighting, they can cast a bit of shadow, which is something that you might need to deal with in post. I grabbed something quite exciting. I grabbed a whole pack of these. These are Perspex rods. They come in a range of different sizes and thicknesses, from the really big fat ones, intermediate ones, and even these tiny ones down here, depending what you're attaching it to, etc. The downside to these is because, let's grab one here just out of this packet, because they are Perspex, you can't really cut them. Like, I'm sure that you could find a way to cut them without them cracking and falling apart, but I'm not really willing to do that. So if I wanted something up high, I will have to do it that way. If I want it to be lower, I need more space to angle it low, and I have to be aware that this is going to be a bit more work to take care of in post. However, because they're transparent, light will go through them, it'll bounce around a little bit, but they don't really cast much of a shadow. They're pretty much invisible when it comes to that side of things, which can make cleanup in post a lot easier. And that's really it. Those three things, well, two things, whichever sort of rod you choose. Skewers are like $5 a pack from the grocery store. Glue gun is dirt cheap. Most people are going to have one somewhere in the junk drawer. That's really all you need, plus, of course, your camera, your lighting, all that stuff, and your subject. This method is not really good for things that are cloth. If you're using something that's organic, like say you wanted to float an orange or an apple, you could easily just skewer it straight through. Even with the transparent rods, you could just push it through, get in position. You do want to work a bit fast before it'll tend to move after a while, and also you have juice drippage, that sort of thing. Cloth, things like that, doesn't always work so well with. Your mileage may vary, but things that are solid, things that have, I mean, just got a mouse here. Yeah, you could do it with a mouse. Now, you'd have to be a bit careful in terms of weight. You might need to have a couple of them, and you might want to do multiple applications of the glue. Gluing it to the subject is fairly straightforward, and the nice thing about hot glue is that it peels off very, very easily, especially if you have a non-porous surface. So anything that is metal, like the back of a phone could be done, all that sort of things, it will come off quite easily. If you are using something that has more weight, you want to have more surface area. So if I was to say take my phone, I could put it like that. I might have to sort of really sort of build up the glue level around it. But if I put it like that and then I glue it, I've got more surface area. It's going to hold its weight better. If it's something that you're concerned about damaging, don't leave it sitting up too long. Rest it, bring it down when you're not shooting, and then raise it for the shot. But it should hold for most of the time, especially when you're talking about lightweight things. They work just fine. The subject I'm shooting today, I chose something that's got some decent weight to it. It's a solid spoon, and I wanted to suspend that, so it worked quite well. For those of you that are curious, today we were shooting with the GH5. I've got an adapted lens on there, so it's a Takumar super multi-coated 50mm if you're interested in that sort of things. I've got two sets of lights. I've got one main light set at daylight temperature, and I've got a little rim light on the side set at a slightly warmer temperature just to brighten up and warm the whole thing. I use a bounce card on the other side for fill. A very, very simple, basic 3-point lighting setup. That's all I really use. Nothing too fancy, nothing extraordinary, and the image came out quite well. And so why don't we just get into the post side of things. Okay, so here we've got the picture in Photoshop ready to work with, and there's a number of things that we need to fix up before we're done. First of all, of course, we're going to have to get rid of this line right here. Now, I'm really glad that I worked with Perspex in this case, because the light coming from that side, it hasn't cast any shadow or anything. That's because this is semi-transparent, so whatever light hits it is going to really fade out by the time it hits the ground there or anything like that. So we need to remove that. We need to make sure that that doesn't dig into the spoon, so that looks correct. And of course, we're going to have to get rid of this big ugly looking block down here. A little bit on the side here, on both sides of the window frame, that needs to be adjusted. The horizon is slightly crooked, so we're going to adjust that too, just to finalize things. And then of course a little bit of reframing and perhaps some color grading at the end. First thing we want to do, though, before we get into any of that, is to duplicate our layer. We want to make sure that we work non-destructively, that we've always got our original picture to look back on just to see what we've done, see how far we've come, to compare things, and also if we ever do make a mistake, we can just roll right back to that beginning start and do the whole thing again. This is our background layer, and as you can see, it is locked. We can leave it that way. We're just going to click on it once, and then we're going to hit our Control and our J key. That's going to duplicate it. Layer 1 is the one we're going to start working with right here. Over on this side, you have all the different tools. We're not going to go through all of those today, but this one right here, you can see it may have, if I hold on to it, it may have one of these selected, but you want to select Object Selection Tool. Click on that. And then up in the top here, where it says Select Subject, there's a drop down. You have a choice of doing this on your desktop, use the power of your computer, or you can use the cloud. You can use all the power of AI on Adobe servers. So I usually select that because you do get a much finer, much better result. So click on that and then hit Select Subject. It's going to take a little bit of time to do its business, but then it's going to spit out a bunch of selection options for us. And as you can see, there's little dotted ants. That's what they call these lines all around things. And when I hover over things, I get that sort of purple overlay. We don't want all of this stuff selected. We just want that one right there. So we're going to click on that and click again. Takes a second. And you can see that dotted line is now just around the spoon, not around anything else. Although I am still in selection mode, so I could add to it if I wanted to include the bowl. We're just gonna click away from that, and we're gonna go Control, Shift, and I. Control, Shift, and I is gonna invert that selection. So now we've selected everything but the spoon, and that's exactly what we want. We don't want to damage the spoon. We're not going to do any work down here, so we didn't really need to protect the bowl or the bottom, but we are going to work here, and we want to make sure that the edge of the spoon is untouched. So that's why we did that. Then you go over to this side, and you're going to select this brand new Remove tool. Now, in the old days, you would do all sorts of other things. You might use the clone stamp. You might use a variety of other tools, and they work really, really well. But the remove tool has made this kind of process so much faster and so much simpler. As you can see, you've got this little icon on the desk that you can move around, just like that, and you can draw. So if I draw there, it does that, and it's going to do its thing. And you can't really tell, but what it did was it removed it. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to draw a line directly from there, just kind of coloring, and I'm not going to be too careful or anything. I'm just going to draw all the way down to the edge of that, and we're going to wait a second. Boom, and it is gone. Look at that. Just completely clean, completely it's an invisible and seamless process. This tool is so fantastic. I'm so happy they've introduced it. It does take jobs that used to take hours. It does them in minutes and seconds. So that is fantastic. Next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the selection. We don't need that anymore. So Control D will do that. And now we have our floating spoon on our bowl. 90% of our work is now already done. If you were to crop this just to the bowl, it would be fine. But I want to have a little bit more space over here. So we're going to get rid of this next. We're going to go back over here and we're going to grab the magnetic lasso tool. It does things by points basically. So click off. Like so. I could have done it with the polygon tool, but I just grabbed that one for no reason. Now that we've got a selection around there, it's time to get rid of that one. Go down to our little, what I can't even remember what they call it, but this little toolbar down here, and it says generative fill, so that's a good key as to what we can do with the selection there. Click on there, and then click once again. If we wanted something specific, we would type it in here. We could type in rubber ducky, or we could type in cookie, and it would try its best. But we just want it to fill with basically a patch. We want to patch it to make it look like whatever is there is gone. So we're just going to hit generate. Again, it sends it up to the servers, it does its job, and it's going to give us 3 different options, and fingers crossed one of them is going to look good and it's going to do that corner properly. Sometimes the corner doesn't work out so well, but let's see how this goes. Okay, it threw in some sort of random fruit. It threw in a weird tree stump, and it threw in a bit of a chair. Tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to delete that. And this is a good sign. See, it doesn't always work exactly the way we want it to. I'm going to go back to the polygon tool, and I'm going to select just a little bit wider, getting rid of that little bit of shadow that's there. I think that's perhaps what was giving us the error there. So having selected a little bit wider, again, we click generate, and we wait. And there, perfect, right on the money. We click on this one, that one, or that one. Don't really like the third one. The second one looks nice and sharp, that clean corner. But I think I'm going to go for the first one because it's got a little bit of the texture and the color, and I think that it fits in just nicely. And as you can see, pretty darn seamless. So just quickly, this is where we've started, and this is where we've gone. So we've just cleaned up the background and we've made things work properly. I'm going to do what's called a stamp, so Control, Shift, Alt, and E. It is a multitude of hands to get that together, a multitude of fingers. And as you can see, nothing changed. But what I did was I created a single layer that has all of that work that we've done in it. So if I turn off all the background ones, you'll see one single layer, nice and simple, very, very easy to work with. We're going to go to this tool right here. This is our crop tool. First thing we're going to do is we're going to choose straighten. And it gives us a tool that we can just sort of pin on a corner and there to get a horizontal line, and it will just fix it just a little bit. It just rotates the picture. And then I'm going to select my ratio, and I think I'm going to go for a 5:7 the other way around, and I'll just bring in the corner just a little bit, and I will hold this and I will just line it up just like so. That clears off the side so I don't have to do any work there. and we're going to commit that with a little plus or check mark there. And there we go. We pretty much are done the picture, except for any sort of color grading or anything that we want to do to this. It is nice, it is clean, it is sharp. It's a fairly busy background, but because it's out of focus, it does sort of stand out. And as you can see, if I just quickly zoom in, you can see absolutely no sign that there was anything coming out from there at all. So let's go back to the full screen, and I'm not going to take a lot of time in color grading this. We'll just choose a lot. I've got a bunch of them here, and I think that if I remember correctly, I think colorways 2. Oh, absolutely not colorways 2. Colorways 3. No, we'll go for something a little bit more subtle. We'll go for the Kodak right there, and we will reduce that down maybe even more. There we go. And that's pretty much this picture done. I could add a bunch of things to it. I could play around, and of course, like I said before, this was simply a test shot for something a bit more complex, so I haven't put any more dressing or anything that in there. So let's go back to the FaceTime section. And there you have it. Pretty simple to do when you've got the tools and the ingenuity to use a little bit of $5 bits and pieces. I will admit that picture is not the most astounding picture out there. I purposely chose something that's more of a proof of concept than a final product. If I was to be actually doing a proper picture, I might have thrown in some cereal in there. I might have actually poured a little bit of milk down so it bounces off the spoon and dribbles down and capture that in the process. And you're dressing up the entire image. This was just a proof of concept to show that yes, it's fairly simple to levitate something without any distractions, and you can pull that rigging from behind it out quite easily with modern tools. Even in the past, like that removal tool is a fairly new one. Even in the past, it was a fairly simple and straightforward process. The larger your rod is, the harder it would be to remove it, but a little bit of clone tooling and stuff like that was a fairly straightforward way of doing it. I hope that this has been somewhat informative, and I would love to see your work. If you take this idea and you go with it, I would love to see not only what you've created with it. Please, if you can, tag me on Instagram or anything like that when you do so, but I'd also love to see what you add to this, other ways that you've found to extend this possibility, because I'm always willing to learn. I don't know everything. This is something that I learned a long time ago, and to be honest, I forgot for a very, very long time. I've brought it back into my arsenal of ways to brighten up or liven up a shoot. So with that all said, thank you for your time, and yeah, stay creative. Catch you next time.